Welcome to the Adapter's Advantage, the podcast that shares insider stories about breakthrough moments that lead to success. Get ready for an inspiring conversation about adapting to change from Allego, the all-in-one sales enablement platform built for success in a hybrid world. Let's dive right in.
Hi, I'm Mark Magnacca, and welcome to the next episode of the Adapter's Advantage podcast. Today, I'm excited to have as my guest Mr. Terry Coutsolioutsos. Terry is the leader of the marketing, sales operation, and communications function at Siemens Healthineers North America, and he's a member of the senior leadership team. This cross-functional team is chartered with cohesively positioning and marketing the company, demonstrating Siemens Healthineers' relevant value to key decision-making customer segments, and supporting a harmonized approach to sales operational excellence. Terry joined Siemens in 2016, and he brings over 25 years of medical device experience across multiple market segments. He's worked in other major industries across the med device industry and has his own long career in sales that he brings to bear in his new role. Most recently, Terry served as the Vice President of Enterprise Solutions, where he headed up national accounts, enterprise solutions, medical education, and sales training. And I want to start right off, Terry, by welcoming you to the podcast. And when you meet people for the first time and they say, so you're with Siemens Healthineers, what do you do? How do you answer that question?
That's a really interesting question, because there's a lot of things that I don't do, but there's a lot of breadth in the role that I do have. But from a title perspective, I head up a centralized shared service organization that supports our 1,500 sellers and marketers. And those three main categories of functionality are marketing, sales operations, and communications. And we do that for the entire commercial organization in North America. And from a Siemens perspective, Siemens Healthineers, I don't know if the audience understands who we are exactly. We're probably the largest manufacturer and supplier of diagnostic laboratory and diagnostic imaging equipment on the globe.
So when people are going to a hospital, there's a pretty good chance that in some of the imaging that's happening, that it's Siemens Healthineers equipment that's being used.
For sure. I think in a lot of our categories, we actually have undisputed market leadership with over 50% market share in our MR and our CT product lines.
Wow. Well, we're going to be diving in a little bit deeper, but Terry, to start right off in the key theme of this podcast is all about how people have adapted. So I'd like to ask you, can you talk about a personal pivot point or a moment of learning that has changed the trajectory of your career?
Absolutely. And it was when I was reading the questions, Mark, and really trying to understand, this is a great story for me because I'm a seller at heart, and I have grown up carrying a bag in this environment. In fact, I don't know what pathway got me to where I'm at today, but at the end of the day, my DNA is a professional, revenue generator. And I did that for probably 10 years. Mm-hmm. And it got to a point where, you become great at what you do, and then you start training other individuals, and you really start seeing the impact that you have on the organization beyond just what you're doing in your own territory. And I would say that at that point, I raised my hand to this organization that's a part of Boston Scientific today and said, hey, I'd like to do more. I want to lead the sales organization. And they said, that's great, Terry, but we'd like to go see you actually develop some other things. And so I raised my hand to go become a sales leader. And they said, why don't you come into marketing and be a product manager? And so that was my first opportunity to go into an organization, take a lateral move, gain some new perspectives, understand how corporations and companies are run, and actually how a marketing organization works. And so that was the first real pivotal role for me that I said, I want to do more, and I want to make an impact in a different way.
So let's pivot to one of those examples where you had to take a risk, overcome some fear, the creation of the value promise framework. Can you talk a little bit about what that is and what kind of impact that approach has had at the company?
Yeah, so I would just say that the value promise framework was a really interesting endeavor for us. historically, Siemens Healthineers, and I would just say the foundation behind our organization has really been around engineering and innovation. And so because of that, a lot of the things that we were doing when we go to market with products, what I would consider was very internally or product feature benefit focused. In 2017 or /18, we decided that we needed to move away from that. We wanted to be a more solution-oriented organization, and we didn't want it to be about our boxes or our instruments. We decided that we wanted to focus and be committed to a customer-centric perspective. And then we went on a learning journey where we really started to, better understand and take an empathetic approach with our customers. And so we did this customer-based research. We sat with customers, we did interviews, and we were asking them, what are your biggest challenges? What are your biggest opportunities? How can we as an organization, a provider of technology and digital solutions, better support you with what you need to get done today? And when we came out of this, we learned that these biggest challenges stemmed in 4 key areas. One is healthcare is a really, verticalized, manufacturer of products and services. And so it really, at the end of the day, lacks systemness or industrialization. And even when you look at all the M&A that's going on in healthcare today, we have big systems buying up smaller systems.
Right.
And then how do you actually create, those standards so that, the healthcare that is being delivered in Pittsburgh is the same healthcare that is being delivered in Charlotte, North Carolina, if you're part of that same healthcare system, right?
Right.
So system and industrialization was one piece that they really needed to help focus on. The other piece is the market has been moving away from these huge, large care centers of excellence to more of community-based care. And you think about it, 10 or 15 years ago, you could drive down, retail way or restaurant way, and you didn't see any healthcare. Now you see urgent care centers. Now you see surgery centers. Now you see laboratory diagnostics in retail environments, right? And so that's happening. And then because healthcare is becoming much more of a consumer-driven marketplace, their customers are actually looking at, they're competing for patients every day. And so patient satisfaction and acquiring market share and retaining that market share is very important to them. And then the fourth challenge they had was a vast, vast majority of all the data that's generated by diagnostic systems or diagnostic imaging systems, all the diagnostics that go on in healthcare, a vast majority is not used accurately or correctly.
Okay.
So when we boiled all this down with the customers, we found that we had 4 key pillars that we could actually, hold ourselves high to and, go to market with to make sure that we're representing our customers with what we do going to market. And the 4 things were that systemness approach I talked about at the beginning was the one pillar is expanding precision medicine. So making medicine more precise so that we can deliver the right therapy to the right patient at the right time.
Yep.
The next piece was moving from these huge care centers of excellence to community-based care, and they needed help in performing, transformation and transforming care delivery of the way it was to the way it needs to be moving forward. So transforming care delivery was number 2. And because, patients and consumerism today are driving healthcare, we wanted to make sure that we're helping them improve their patient experience. Okay. And then the 4th piece is doing this, becoming, data operational and making sure that you are acquiring data, you're, integrating data, you're analyzing data and creating insights from that data. That the digitalization of healthcare is critically important moving forward, not just acquiring the data and the information, but then how do you use AI and machine learning and robotics to actually, power up your healthcare system effectively. So those 4 key pillars. And then we had to go through the transformation of actually changing the organization from looking around products and features every day and talking to customers about that and reverse engineering that into conversations that wrapped around our customers' biggest challenges.
Well, I'll tell you that having meaning in the kind of focus that you're talking about goes a long way. And I think it gives me a perfect pivot point to what I want to talk to you about next, because you did all this work, I'll call it on sort of the structure of the business. And now I'd like to come over to the sales organization, because many of our listeners are across financial services, across med device, pharma, life sciences, and other related industries. But the common denominator is trying to figure out the transformation around the sales organization. And there are many firms like McKinsey, Terry, who are saying that between 50 and 60% of existing salespeople are going to need to be reskilled to, quote, learn how to orchestrate in an omni-channel environment. So going back to your marketing experience, they're basically saying the problem they're seeing is that a lot of the skill set that's needed now is marketing skills coupled with sales skills, not just traditional face-to-face selling, because a lot of that isn't happening in the same way that it was. So my question is, what informed your vision for your digital exchange tech stack to help the sales team leverage technology and to continue to drive these efficiencies?
Well, it's a great question. And I think there's two parts to it. So the first part is when I got here, when you think of Siemens Healthineers and you look at it on the outside of our product portfolio, it reeks of digital. It has lots of AI and machine learning that are involved in all of our portfolios. And when I came here in April of 2016, if you looked at us internally, we were really an analog organization.
Okay.
We had a 16-year-old Siebel CRM system. Okay. We had no business intelligence. We had no content management. We had no sales enablement. We had no mobile learning. We didn't have anything we didn't have a tech stack at all.
This is 2016.
Yeah, this is 2016, right?
Wow.
And so, the heart and soul of the organization of our marketing, sales operations, and corporate communications teams, and really more of the sales operations group, but they really kind of strap that sack on their shoulder. And so in 3 years, so within the first year, we actually brought in business intelligence, and we brought in Tableau and Click to help us better understand and automate our data flow so we can understand our markets and our customers better, number one. We went on a 3-year journey to design and develop a brand new CRM and CPQ systems for our equipment and our sellers to use. And then, we pivoted there and we brought in Allego, and actually, they were there to help us support our mobile learning engagement to help us scale up and engage our sellers in the field. Mm-hmm. We used another content management group and sales enablement platform to help us house and manage our content from a marketing and advertising perspective. And that's where we kind of started there. And it was kind of like, I don't know if we would have done it the same way today that we did back then, but we really did sort of create a tech stack, and we started stacking things on top of one another. And I think the goal moving forward, though, is that, and we're not using a Salesforce type of product, we use Oracle, so we had to sort of build everything and plug everything into it, is that, I'm still striving to create better experiences for our sellers. We're trying to create more tech and less stack in our environment for our sellers. We're trying to make it easy for them to adopt new technologies, new functionalities, new data flows so that they can be smarter. So there's the tech stack part, there's really important part, but more importantly, Mark, I think when we talk about evolving and commercially transforming an organization, the platform or the tech piece is only one part of it. I look at things moving forward that, kind of keep me up at night as I think, tech companies have done a really good job of adapting themselves to being where the customers are and, finding ways to sell virtually and remotely and, using marketing and sales development reps to sort of nurture and bring those things. The medical technology and device space, we're really kind of probably 10 or 15 years behind doing all these things. And when I look at things that are changing in the marketplace, number one, buyers are spending less time with sellers every single day.
Yep.
Right. So before the pandemic, it was like 60%. Post-pandemic, 80%. So 80% of a buyer's process is done without a seller today. 20 years ago, that buyer, when I was selling to them, I was like 95% of that process.
Yes.
Now it's 20.
Yeah.
The other piece is COVID made a huge transition in terms of live and in person to remote and virtual. And that changed the rules for everything. And I think there are pieces of that that are never going to snap back to normal. And I think there are a lot of businesses thinking that our customers still want to see us live every time they meet with us. I don't think so. And then the third, which is really interesting, is the evolving workplace demographics, where the millennial and the Gen Z in 5 years is going to represent up to 75% of the workforce. And what's interesting about that is they're a digital first buyer.
Right.
So they're not reaching out to people to help them make buying decisions. And I can just speak to you where we're at today as I'm beginning this new transformational journey that really revolves around processes and platforms and people all kind of coming together and converging, so that at the end of the day, our sellers can be where our buyers want them to be when they want them there. And I think that's the customer centric we're really trying to take the approach to.
Terry, I love this part that you're talking about. I mean, it's just interesting how it's almost like we're tapped into the same ether here, because you're coming at it based on your experience and we're coming at it from another angle, but we're arriving in very much the same place. And, the interesting thing that I heard in the McKinsey conversation I was just referencing with you was that the consultant said, what people forget is that the procurement people and the marketing people and all of the other parts of the organization who are not sellers, they have Amazon Prime too. Right. They have had an experience of what it can be like. And so, what's remarkable to me is I'm thinking about you arriving there in 2016. Honestly, forget a Lego, just the fact that you could get anything, to have the culture change that much, to have an important tech stack evolve and be used in 5 years. I mean, I don't have to tell you, like in the old days, that would have been fast. And obviously in post-pandemic time, maybe not so much. But my question is, just with regards to the culture shift, how much resistance was there as the new guy when you said, I think we're going to need a tech stack and we can't use a 15-year-old CRM?
Well, I think there was a lot of people, there's probably a 50-50 kind of thing, where there was half the audience said, we need this, right? Because they came from other places that had Salesforce or other strong CRM systems, and half were like, we don't need it, right? And so again, it's not just about the tech. It's really about the process and what are you doing to make the seller be more effective or more efficient. One of the things that we really were trying to the mantras that we're selling, the value proposition to a seller was, this thing can offer you probably two things. If you're money motivated, then you can spend more time selling and it should generate more revenue for you to generate more commissions.
Yeah.
And not everybody's money motivated anymore. So we had to kind of figure out, like, if you're not money motivated, what does a CRM system offer you? Well, it might turn your 65-hour week into a 55-hour week that now you can give 10 hours back to your family, or to, a group that you want to provide your time to, or be a coach, or do something different that, brings value to your life. And so it was all about bringing value to a seller. And that was one part of it. The other piece was, we not only brought in the CRM system, we also brought in Miller Heiman. We actually delivered that Miller Heiman. We did blue sheets and gold sheets. And we actually did a tremendous amount of transformation through that with, our 1,000 sellers and our 500 marketers that were all lined up to actually do this together. So, everybody, there's leadership at the top is always important. Creating systems that have ease of use and great user design is important. Creating competency channels and making sure that everybody understands what to do, when to do it. Those are the things that typically get in the way of transformation. And then the most important part at the end, which Lego had a lot of really important factors in all of this, is like you are a reinforcement tool beyond just having the leaders engaging. And so having that mobile technology that supported our sellers, whether it was a process question or a platform question, the Lego was there to support our team.
Well,
Not to give you a commercial, but that was the reality of it.
I am really happy to hear it, Terry, but there's one really cool thing I want to tease out that you just mentioned a moment ago. And that was this idea that while you have a tech stack for benefit of your sellers, what I think I heard was what you're really trying to do is improve the experience for the buyers. So yes, you want to help the sellers, but did I capture that correctly? That's the
You
real
did, and it's really important. And this goes to, if you look at what the methods that we're looking at are really with strategic selling with perspective, which with perspective is the customer perspective. You're putting the customer at the center of everything you do. And, I do think we have another chapter of Transformation Company that's going to be wrapped around a culture of empathy. And instead of using reptilian sort of sales models like, spin selling or challenger, where you're putting tension on the customer, you're kind of poking them. Yeah. What we're looking to do is to provide that empathetic seller that actually understands the customer, that can design solutions because the customer feels and trusts that person, that they're sitting down and they actually understand what they're wanting to achieve with their investment with your organization.
It's a really perfect transition point to the next big thing I want to cover with you, because it's a topic that's so critical. And yet I know so many people have struggled to try to figure out the right way to approach it. And of course, what I'm talking about for you is this idea behind one community and your efforts to help foster a diverse and inclusive culture. I'm curious if you would just share with our listeners what this is and then how you are measuring the impact of that initiative.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. It's a passion of mine in terms of, I think, diversity is always the what, and to me, inclusion is the how, right? And I think we all know and understand that having a diverse organization makes us all better. And when I came to Siemens Healthineers and, I became the chairperson of our diversity and inclusion group, it was really an interesting opportunity. And I've worked for organizations that have great diversity and inclusion initiatives with Abbott and Boston Scientific previously. Mm-hmm. And when I got here, the D&I group had 9 employee resource groups. We call them ERGs, right? And these 9 ERGs existed inside the organization, and they really kind of very specifically cater to those specific areas of interest that the ERG brings forward, right? Yeah. And we were trying to become we wanted diversity and inclusion to become a bigger part of our culture. And we wanted it to sort of seep into the culture across everyone. And what we found was when we started talking to people and gaining the perspective of the organization around trying to get people to rally and join up and sign up for our D&I organization, was that some of them didn't always feel like they could find an ERG that really represented them. Mm-hmm. Right. And so they felt like if they weren't going to join an ERG, they couldn't be a part of the diversity and inclusion group.
Interesting.
Yeah. It's kind of a really interesting.
So like if I'm not in that subgroup, then I'm not going to join that one, which is almost promoting a completely different dynamic than the intention of inclusion. Right.
Exactly. Right. So we had to kind of sit back and, take, some inventory of ourselves and understand how we could go back and approach our 15,000 employees that exist in North America. And one of the key things that we were trying to do was that we wanted you to feel part of one community. And so we just sort of started bouncing around with our marketing and our advertising groups, and we came up with this concept of one community that actually is delivering the how, the inclusion part of diversity, and where you didn't have to be a part of a group that was dedicated towards, people of, color or from an Asian, historically past, or, somebody from a Hispanic group or something along those lines. We wanted people to feel like they could actually join an organization, a diversity inclusion organization that represented an entire community. And our team really kind of wrapped around that. And I will tell you that our ERGs became more inclusive. Our people became much more oriented around, becoming a part of this one community. And we have great leaders inside of this. And so we have, since I've gone and moved on past the chairmanship of the D&I group a couple of years ago, but we've got great new leadership. We are, changing the look and the feel of our organization from top to bottom, whether it's gender-based, whether it's color-based, whether it's, preference-based, what all of those things are. You can see a truly different organization today than you did 5 years ago. And we still have a long way to go, by the way.
Sure.
We still have more improvements to make, but the bottom line is the organization is committed to this diverse, inclusive environment where everybody feels like they can be a part of something and everybody feels like they can be heard.
Well, I'm going to do a little lightning round here with you, Terry, just for a moment here. So a real simple question. What do you believe is the most important thing that sales leaders need to stop doing to help them adapt to this hybrid virtual world?
I think they need to stop hoping that the world's going to snap back.
Perfect. That's well said. Now, what do you believe is the most important thing that sales leaders need to start doing to help them adapt?
I think they need to equip their sellers to handle any environment. It's kind of funny where, I just had this really interesting conversation with my head of sales education, and we talked about, creating virtual selling skills, right? Versus versus selling skills. And we've actually decided that, it's just selling skills, and it needs to encompass virtual, it needs to encompass live, it needs to encompass, mobile, whatever it might be. But, it's really a challenging time in terms of picking up these skills, but you got to do it all. And so we need to equip our sellers to handle any environment at any time.
So based on your experience and the conversation we've had, what do you see as the most important skill, in particular for young people, that you think they should learn or improve today?
Yeah, it's a great question, and something I've already talked about earlier, but I would say that, empathy is the one skill or capability that I think people need to bring to the table. And I'm speaking from somebody who's not naturally empathetic. Okay. I've conditioned myself and, taught myself through, being diligent and those types of things. But, most sellers are type A. Most sellers are black and white, win or lose, success or fail, or am I over 100% or not, over, close the deal, not close the deal. And so there's a lot of what with most sellers historically, right? And we've been taught to actually put tension on the customer, bring implication into every selling situation. And we've really been taught to sort of, do these things and put tension and hard things. And, I don't think most sellers are wired with empathy. So my biggest suggestion would be is not only learn what empathy is, but then you actually need to understand how to actually, have empathy be a part of your culture. And you have to learn it. You really have to start feeling what empathy is like and understanding the success that it brings to you. And so I think empathy is that one skill characteristic that sellers need to take forward, moving forward, because the buyers want somebody that actually understands them, will help them, and reduce the complexity of the buying cycle on their side.
Well, Terry, listen, this has been a great conversation. I definitely am going to want to continue it. I want to leave our audience with, if they want to learn more about Siemens Healthineers, or they want to be able to reach out to you directly, what's the best way for them to do that?
So from me perspective, I'm on LinkedIn. And so I'm probably my biggest engagement for people in the marketplace and networking. So they can just find, Terry Koutsolioutsos, Koutsolioutsos, LinkedIn. There's not very many in the US, by the way. And then
as soon as you type in COUT, by the way, it pops up.
Pops up, right? And then the two other things around Siemens Healthineers, there's obviously our website, right? SiemensHealthineers.com. But there's the other piece that might be a little more exciting for people to see is if you Googled Shape 22, Siemens Healthineers, it's a live stream. And we do this once a year, and it's sort of our coming out party for our new technology and our new presence. And this year was really wrapped around 3 different clinical conditions on how our technology is supporting, healthcare providers and actually, showing the implications from a patient perspective. And so Shape 22 Stream, SiemensHealthineers.com, and then Terry Koutsolioutsos on LinkedIn.
Terry, it's been a real pleasure. I look forward to continuing the conversation, and thanks for being part of the show.
Mark, thank you so much.
You've been listening to The Adapter's Advantage, a podcast from Allego. Stay connected by subscribing to the show at allego.com/podcast, leaving us a rating and comment, and sharing episodes you love. That helps us bring you more conversations about breakthrough moments that lead to success. Thanks for listening. Until next time, remember that one new idea can change your life.